Now, writing in the wake, I presume, of Barack Obama's inauguration, which, of course, was so heavily trumpeted by the media and the culture, you say we seem to be heading into a new era of racial reconciliation. Yet lately we've had the Henry Louis Gates controversy and the birthers and other things that are racially tinged controversies. So I think your era of reconciliation has hit a few bumps on the road.
Well, actually, I was writing this book in as recently as May and early June, so it's not as though I was in some Inauguration Day swoon while I was writing it. And I don't suggest that we have suddenly, with the election of Barack Obama or with the recession, turned 180 degrees. I'm talking directionally about this swing of the pendulum away from the last few years, and I think that's happening. Yes, we see kind of we see racial tensions continuing. Absolutely, we see kind of crypto-racist fueling some of the crazy attacks on this administration. Yes, that's going to still be there, but I'm still hopeful. It becomes somewhat less. It becomes harder to be quite as hopeful when one sees the nuttiness, the sort of Glenn Beck nuttiness, for instance, that...
Well, since you mentioned his name,
yes.
let me first read a sentence that struck me in your book. Let's put it up on the screen. You say that hyperbolic rants and rigid talking points in either Limbauian or Obermanian flavors now seem worse than useless. And yet, Rush Limbaugh has probably gotten more attention in the last 6 months than he's gotten in a long time, and Keith Olbermann isn't exactly lacking the spotlight either.
No, to me, it's the last hurrah of a discredited era where people substitute shouting instead of reasoned discussion, which is, again, it's not going to go away overnight. But I think, and people like Glenn Beck, Rush Limbaugh, Keith Olbermann are invested in a certain kind of anger, and there is going to be a small number of Americans who flock to that and who respond to that, but a small number of Americans is very good, a perfectly good basis for a business model if you got a cable channel.
Well, that's a point that I often make on this program, which is that you get a couple of million people watching, and you're a huge success, even though it's a small amount of the small percentage of the culture. But you write about the juvenilization of national life, and you mention Glenn Beck. You say children scream and cry and exaggerate like Glenn Beck, but he is, at least by the standards of this cable universe and radio talk shows, a pretty successful guy. So you say it's a discredited culture. I'm not sure I see the evidence of that.
Well, one piece of evidence is that this last week, the adults, at least insofar as they are run the consumer products companies that have heretofore sponsored Glenn Beck, have taken the wheel back and said, nah, this is craziness. This is extreme. We don't want our ads on his show. So, I think, I trust the market over the long run to correct, and I think Glenn has found where the market is going to correct for his over-the-top nuttiness.
But what you would call nuttiness, don't people like Glenn Beck and CNN's Lou Dobbs speak for a certain disaffected portion of the culture? You say that you have been critical of Dobbs, but that all the excess on Wall Street made you viscerally understand the rage and disgust of his followers.
Absolutely. But when it gets to the point of simply asserting untruths about birth certificates or about Barack Obama being a racist, I can viscerally understand when my children, when they were small, crying and screaming and telling lies. That doesn't mean I have to agree with them or pretend as though they're not acting up.
But how good is the mainstream media culture at providing some sort of antidote or corrective to things that you might think, I might think, or people with different political views might think are untruths, exaggerations, distortions by people who have a pretty big megaphone because they've got a big television show or a big radio show?
Well, you have to do what you can do. I was watching one of CNN's competitors, MSNBC, and I saw Dr. Nancy Snyderman doing an exquisitely good job of moderating a discussion of health care. Not screaming and not saying, oh, these people are stupid or nutty, but saying, here's the facts. Let's not pretend that there are anything such as death panels proposed under any bill in Congress. And so all you can do is be reasonable, be fair-minded, try to tell the facts as they are, and hope that at the end of the day, the good and the true and the real drive out the bad and the false.